Good Friday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, picking up the pieces. The number of deaths being blamed on the remnants of Ida rises this morning in the Northeast, with at least 42 people now confirmed dead after record-shattering rain pummeled the tri-state area and beyond, with tornadoes in tow. We'll bring you to hard-hit New Jersey with a look at recovery efforts. Plus, the South still reeling from Ida. We'll have the latest from New Orleans as President Biden readies for his first visit to Ida's devastation along America's Gulf Coast. What's next? The fallout this morning from that new restrictive abortion ban in Texas. President Biden weighs in on the Supreme Court's controversial concession. Plus, the Republican-led states gearing up to pass similar legislation. The new normal updated vaccine guidance from Dr. Anthony Fauci this morning, supporting the Biden administration's push for a booster shot rollout, saying it's, quote, likely Americans will need that third dose to be fully vaccinated. This as healthcare workers across the country grow increasingly frustrated with the influx of Delta variant patients. We'll take you to one Montana medical center on the brink. And lights up. Broadway is now finally back in the swing of things with the long-awaited return of shows like Waitress and Hadestown, both back this week. We'll bring you Joe's special report on the revival roaring back from a COVID intermission. And not only is that your report, you were a member of the audience.
Yes, if I'm a little tired this morning, it's because we went to the opening night of Waitress last night. Fantastic experience. We'll talk more about that. And also Hadestown opened last night. Many more shows to come.
Oh, so can I say you just moved to New York and already attending the opening nights of Broadway plays? Aren't you cool? All right, we'll get to that a little bit later, but we begin with the devastating impact Ida left on the Northeast.
At least 62 people have now died from the storm, most of them in the area between New York City and Philadelphia. Floodwaters and tornadoes caused widespread damage. 25 people have now died in New Jersey. 6 others are missing. 17 deaths have been reported in New York and 5 in Pennsylvania. Many were trapped in their cars in their neighborhoods for hours on end, with hundreds rescued from their homes across the region. Things are still not back to normal this morning. The cleanup is still ongoing, and roadways and public transport are feeling the impact. Dozens of people will also not be able to return to their homes. Check out this video from Manville, New Jersey. A home in the floodwaters caught fire. No one was there at the time. Also in New Jersey, this dangerous funnel cloud in the town of Mullica Hill, just south of Philadelphia, flattening homes there. The National Weather Service now confirms that there was an EF3 tornado there with winds peaking at 150 miles an hour. NBC News reporter Gary Grumbach is there in Mullica Hill. So, Gary, first of all, tell us what kind of damage are you still seeing there this morning?
Hey there, Joe. Yeah, residents of this Mullica Hill neighborhood are waking up in friends and families' homes or local hotels, and they're going to be making way here to their homes to start picking up the pieces again. This is 36 hours after, as you mentioned, an EF3 tornado just ripped through this neighborhood. And some of this damage, it was on the ground for 20 minutes, this tornado, but it spanned 12 miles across South Jersey at the width of about 4 football fields. So that is the level of damage we're talking. I want to show you a little bit of what this looks like here. We see trees just split in half. You see personal items thrown out across the yard here. You see the playground just on its side over here. And then you see a house. The entire second floor of that home has been destroyed. And the remarkable thing about this storm and about this tornado, Joe, is that these houses here are just completely destroyed. But just across the street, right there, that house doesn't even look like it was touched by the tornado. So it just speaks to how random this storm was and how dangerous tornadoes really are. Joe?
Yeah, one of the stunning things you see if you're at the scene of a tornado is how some homes are spared and others are destroyed. So for the people who survived this tornado, I mean, what was it like for them?
It was just absolute fear. And as a tornado comes, you don't have a whole lot of time to prepare. So people in this neighborhood got to their basements if they could, if they had a basement, got to their basements and brought with them whatever they immediately thought of, their pets, their cats, their dogs, a little bit of food or water, but not a whole lot more than that, because you never think a tornado is going to hit your house, one, and you never think it's going to destroy your house. So they did not necessarily bring everything with them that they would have needed, and that's what we're seeing scenes here of dressers just out on the side of these homes, clothes across the yard, and personal effects just everywhere in this neighborhood. Here's what one woman had to say about what she saw.
Everything was just crashing down on us. The light was shining through. There was nothing over us. Our whole two-story house just crumbled around us.
Now, there is some good news coming out of this Mulligan Hill neighborhood. There were no injuries and no casualties reported from this neighborhood. However, as you mentioned, 23 people did die in the state of New Jersey, mostly due to rising floodwaters.
Yeah, Gary, quickly, there's damage across New Jersey from Ida. What kind of help does the state need?
So on the federal level, Governor Murphy said yesterday that he's going to be submitting a declaration for emergency help. That's going to get funds from the federal level into New Jersey. But on the community level, it is remarkable to see, we talk about Mr. Rogers, always look for the helpers after this emergency and after any sort of emergency. And that's what we're seeing here with piles of cases of water, buckets from Lowe's and Home Depot, and some canned goods as well for the neighborhood. Joe?
All right. All of that in need. Gary, thanks for your reporting. Appreciate it.
In Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is just about 30 minutes from here in New York City, at least 4 people in the same apartment complex were killed in the disastrous flooding there. Here's how one neighbor described the situation.
All you hear is help, I'm stuck, I need help, can y'all please help? It's like you was just watching people die and you just couldn't do nothing about it. It's just something I'm going to always remember.
Joining us now is the mayor of Elizabeth, New Jersey, J. Christian Bolwage. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us this morning on what is unfortunately just a devastating morning, I know, for your community. I mean, that account we just heard from a neighbor is just devastating. It's actually hard to believe that that is just right here in New Jersey. So first, I mean, how's your city doing? I understand yesterday police were going door to door to essentially do wellness checks on the 600 people that live at that apartment complex. But how are you guys doing?
Our challenge now, Savannah, is to house 600 people. 275 units are uninhabitable. I've worked with Senator Menendez and Senator Booker and Congressman Series, and HUD is going to provide 275 temporary permanent vouchers for up to a year. Currently, hundreds of people are now in our sports arena at the high school on temporary cots. We have some in hotels. And our challenge going forward is to make sure that these survivors have housing. Our hearts go out to the 4 people, a male and female in their 70s and a male and a female in their 30s, who were in the same apartment, number 104, right near the river, who succumbed to the water.
Absolutely. Our hearts are with them as well. Mayor, there's been so much talk about how much rain came down in such a short period of time, especially, of course, in places like you just mentioned, this apartment complex next to a river, really impacted by that. How taken by surprise were people? I mean, people are in their apartments still because they don't realize how bad it's going to be. Is there anything different that could have been done to prepare, or anything we can do differently moving forward to keep people safe in extreme weather events like this?
My neighbor has a rain bucket, and that rain bucket measured 12.5 inches. While that's not scientific, I can tell you that the floodwaters at the complex, as well as the fire headquarters across the street, reached 8 to 10 feet higher than the bed of the river. And going forward, this site was a flood control mitigation process that was done in the 60s and 70s by the Army Corps of Engineers. And at that time, they informed the city council and the mayor that this mitigation process would work for about 50 years. And now we're on that 50-year mark. This area used to regularly flood in the 60s and 70s. The Army Corps of Engineers mitigation process eliminated that. And this is the first tragedy of flooding that this city has seen in this neighborhood for 50 years.
And Mayor, what do you think that means needs to be done next? I mean, what is preparation? What is recovery going to look like? And how do we make sure that something like this doesn't happen again? I mean, is it a complete rebuilding of the infrastructure system?
Well, climate change is going to adversely impact this river going forward. The construction that occurred upstream, the current of the river flowing through a cement flume was really difficult to handle. And going forward, unfortunately, I think there'll be more flooding in low-lying cities like the city of Elizabeth, unless there's an investment of hundreds of millions of dollars to widen rivers and take back some property along the rivers in order to have some wetlands.
After an event like this, I really do hope that climate change and what we need to be doing stays a part of the conversation. Mayor Bolwage, we are thinking of your city this morning, Elizabeth, New Jersey. Thank you for joining us.
On the Gulf Coast, where Hurricane Ida hit earlier this week, recovery efforts are still underway in the sweltering heat. More than 80% of New Orleans remains without power. Lines for water and fuel stretch around the block in many places. Later today, President Biden will tour the damage there and other hard-hit parts of southern Louisiana. In that state, 9 people have died. Entire communities are still flooded. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber has been covering it for us all week long. She joins us from New Orleans with the latest. Ellison, good morning. Sounds like power is slowly being restored to more parts of the city. Every time we've checked in with you this week, you've pretty much been in the dark. What are you seeing now?
Yeah, in New Orleans, they say they've restored about 13% of power as of yesterday evening at 5 p.m. Statewide, they say about 16% of the power is back. It's sporadic. In some neighborhoods, you'll see a store here or there with lights, and then just a couple feet away, the other one is still out. The CEO of New Orleans Entergy, the big energy company, they say that they finished damage assessments yesterday, and they expect to have a better time frame, a better timeline for customers in terms of when they might see their lights come back on sometime this morning. But we've heard across the state that it could take really quite a while in some of the hardest hit areas. In Baton Rouge, that's the only place we have kind of an official estimation, and officials there, they say that they think that that power should largely be back on next week as of Wednesday. Everybody else, though, still waiting to hear exactly when. In St. Charles Parish, they've said that power could be out there for at least a month. We were at one of the FEMA and National Guard distribution centers yesterday where people from all over had come to try and get a little bit of ice, a little bit of food, and a little bit of water. Listen to what one person told us.
I'm driving around on that much gas with no gas can. Got money, but you can't spend it because it's on a card.
How long can you make do like this?
I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor. We're going to do this one way or the other.
And that man, he is from Kenner, Louisiana. That's in Jefferson Parish, a particularly hard-hit area. His home, he was there with his wife of 40 years, his 3 children. A tree collapsed on their house. The roof caved in. They thankfully all got out safely. They came to New Orleans to stay in a friend's home, a friend who had evacuated. But as you heard him talking about there, he wasn't entirely sure how he was going to feed his 3 grandchildren, all of them under the age of 8. He specifically made a plea to President Biden saying, hey, we need you. We need help here, not just promises. Joe?
He truly is a survivor. I mean, speaking of President Biden, he will arrive there this afternoon to survey the damage. What is on his itinerary? What can he do to help people like that gentleman there you were just speaking with?
Yeah, so we know that he's going to be taking a look at the damage. We expect him to get an aerial view of the damage and meet with state and local officials. Beyond that, we don't know exactly what his day will look like, but I've spoken to a lot of people who are eager to see him here. They're hoping that it gets them attention because the power being out, it's easy to look around New Orleans and think, oh, things aren't that bad here. But when you look at people's faces, you see really what they are dealing with. It is a heat wave. It is dangerously hot here. Not only do people need their power back on just for comfort, but you have people who have medicine that has to be refrigerated. They are running out of the provisions they had. People are in a really bad situation here. They want to know when they're going to have their power back, and they want to see more power back on quickly. They're hoping President Biden being here gets more attention and helps move things a little bit quicker. Joe.
All right, Ellison, thank you for your reporting. Appreciate it. We've kept meteorologist Bill Cairns busy the last couple weeks tracking all this extreme weather. Let's check back with him. Get a look at your morning news now weather and weekend forecast.
Hey, Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. So, yes, we are watching 2 areas of the country that were heavily impacted by extreme weather events. And thankfully, the Northeast is the one that gets the prize. Yesterday was a beautiful, clear day. Great for all the crews to get out there and do the water rescues along the rivers that were still swelling. But now those rivers have come down, and today is going to be equally as clear, and there's no rain in the forecast. So a lot of the rivers have come down dramatically. The areas in central and northern New Jersey, you still see a couple of those maroon colors colors, pinkish. Those are still major flooding on those rivers. But the Raritan River, which is we were showing you pictures yesterday of, the one that went through Somerset County with record flooding, has come down, and it's going to be out of major flood stage shortly. The Passaic River is a slower moving river through northern Jersey, so that one's going to take a couple days still to crest, and we still will have additional damage on that river. All the rest of the rivers have come down considerably, and that situation will be improving. So let me take you through the ingredients of this disaster. So the highest rainfall totals were just north of Philadelphia, and of course those rivers flowed down towards Philadelphia, which is why Philadelphia had such horrific flooding yesterday. And then all that through New York City, up through Connecticut, and even southern portions of Rhode Island. Rainfall totals from 9 to 8 to 7. You get the idea. Incredible rainfall rates with that torrential rain and thunderstorms that came through. And the climate connection is we know that for every 1 degree we warm the atmosphere can actually hold more water, 7% more. Since the pre-industrial time, 1880s, so far we have warmed our planet almost 1 degree Celsius. So we are allowing the atmosphere to hold even more. And with the projections that we're going to end up at least 2 degrees warmer, maybe even warmer than that if we don't start curbing our emissions, you could get the idea. We're going to get more of these extreme events. So the rain and snowstorms are going to be larger. They're going to be able to hold more moisture. And it's not distributed evenly. From the study that was presented since 1958, this is a Climate Science Special Report, the Northeast and the Great Lakes are actually seeing the highest increase in extreme precipitation events. And that really fits what we just saw with Ida and, of course, in the Great Lakes. And you notice in the West, of course, the West isn't getting any additional heavy rain. They've been in this horrific drought. So we'll continue to watch that in the Northeast and the recovery. As far as Ida goes, there's no relief in New Orleans this time of year. It's still summer. It's still 101 this afternoon. Into the holiday weekend, 91, 91, 90 degrees with the heat in D.C. around 100. There's still over 800,000 people without power. So we are at the peak week of hurricane season. There's always systems to track this time of year. Of course, the one closest to us we're a little concerned with down there in the Western Caribbean, but that's not expected to develop anytime soon. Hurricane Larry should become a major, powerful hurricane in the days ahead, but I'm happy to report, guys, this one is likely going to be a fish storm. What we call fish storms is ones that never hit land. And we'll have to watch Bermuda carefully, but the East Coast is safe from Larry. Just some large waves the middle to end of next week. So we do get a little bit of a reprieve here, but we still have a long ways to go in hurricane season. September and October are typically the 2 most active months.
All right. Let's hope for more of those fish storms. Bill, thanks for everything this week. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. Now, debate is intensifying this morning after the Supreme Court declined to block a controversial abortion law in Texas known as a fetal heartbeat bill. Now, the court's majority said the order doesn't rule whether this bill is constitutional, leaving the door open for it to potentially be struck down in the future. But in the meantime, it becomes one of the most restrictive in the country, and abortion rights activists are gearing up to fight back, especially with the future of Roe v. Wade at stake. NBC News correspondent Katie Beck reports.
A divided Supreme Court decision causing more divide across the country.
Everyone deserves to have the ability to decide if and when to carry a child.
A late-night 5-4 vote allows the country's most restrictive abortion law to stand in Texas. Justices denying the request to block the law, saying abortion providers failed to make their case that the court should step in. The law forbids abortions after cardiac activity is detected, typically at 6 weeks, and allows citizens to sue anyone who assisted someone to get an abortion after that time. President Biden vowing to challenge the law with powerful federal resources, saying it unleashes unconstitutional chaos. Meanwhile, defenders of the law call it incredible progress. Florida and South Dakota already making moves toward adopting their own.
It clearly is going to send a signal to all the states that are interested in banning abortion.
Advocates of abortion rights predict a firestorm of similar legislation.
Roe versus Wade is a dead letter in Texas today.
You use the word sneaky to describe the Texas law. What's sneaky about it?
So what they've done is said, we're not going to enforce the law. We're going to empower individuals to be able to sue people to stop them from having abortions. We're going to try to get someone else to do our dirty work for us.
The issue again heads to the Supreme Court in coming months. Katie Beck, NBC News.
Coming up, Dr. Anthony Fauci now clearing the air on the Biden administration's push for a booster shot rollout.
His latest guidance, plus the dire situation at one Montana medical center as COVID cases pile up. That's next on Morning News Now. If you consider yourself fully vaccinated, that could be about to change. On September 20th, health officials are planning to roll out booster shots for nearly all Americans. And Dr. Anthony Fauci said he thought this third dose could soon become part of the complete COVID vaccination schedule.
I would not at all be surprised that the adequate full regimen for vaccination will likely be 3 doses. If it is durable, then you're going to have very likely a 3-dose regimen being the routine regimen. But we'll just have to wait to make sure that that's the case when the data get presented to the FDA.
In Montana, COVID is surging, but private employers are banned from requiring staff to be vaccinated. NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez got a rare look inside an ICU in the state.
The ICU at Billings Clinic in Montana is nearing 150% capacity, and the hospital is asking the National Guard for help.
I would not wish this stuff on like my worst enemy at all.
Patrick Bershia has been here more than a week. He's just 24 years old.
Do you regret not getting the vaccine?
Absolutely. I 100% regret it.
During our brief interview, he paused to catch his breath, but he wanted to continue so he could counter what he called misinformation.
That the vaccine was not a real vaccine, that it was like a tracking chip the government was trying to use on us.
That's what's so frustrating to healthcare workers here.
We're here to do our part, but it feels like those choosing to refuse vaccine aren't helping us.
This is the ER. They've set up overflow beds in the hallways. And just this week, the hospital had to divert nearly 30 ambulances to other facilities in just one day. And for some nurses, it's personal. Brad Von Bergen lost his mother and stepfather to COVID last year. How hard is it to keep doing this?
Oh, man, I never thought we'd be in this situation again.
Joey Trawick didn't think so either. He worked at another hospital we visited here in October.
We are broken.
Since then, he came down with COVID and recovered.
There's just something about my brain that has to stay positive.
So would you say you're still broken?
I would say I'm healing.
This deep into the pandemic for both nurses and patients.
Thank you. You guys are really my heroes.
Healing doesn't come easy. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News, Billings, Montana.
Let's now bring in Dr. Mario Ramirez. He's an emergency physician and the former pandemic and emerging threats coordinator under President Obama. Dr. Ramirez, good to have you with us. As we just heard, Dr. Fauci says he wouldn't be surprised if COVID vaccines require 3 shots for full regimen. Can you explain the science behind his decision to say that? And in your mind, which is more important, getting boosters in already vaccinated people or still trying to get shots to those unvaccinated Americans?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are probably coming into a place where both of those things are going to be just as important, Joe, at least here in the United States in the near future. You know, one of the things and one of the reasons that I think Dr. Fauci is saying this is because what we're seeing out of Israeli data, right? So folks know, you know, the Israelis are a country that used primarily Pfizer vaccines, so an mRNA vaccine similar to the approach we used, but had much better vaccination rates very early this year, and saw a massive increase in their cases over the last several weeks. So their caseload in the country went from just a few cases a day up to 7,500 new cases a day, with, importantly, a corresponding increase in hospitalizations. And the only thing that has brought that back down is their use of booster shots over the last few weeks. And so the U.S. probably has a few weeks before we're in that same place. So if we're going to head that off, it's going to be important for us to roll out booster shots as well.
Dr. Ramirez, I find it interesting that Dr. Anthony Fauci uses language like this will make you fully vaccinated or this third dose is part of the routine regimen. Because, you know, with something like the flu shot, we don't really call it fully vaccinated. It's something we expect to get each year as it's a seasonal virus. I mean, is that what we should expect here? It's not like this third shot means you're done, or is that what it means?
Well, I think we've got to let the science lead the way on this, really, right? I mean, I think there are different times where you've said, well, this is only going to be a one-shot, you know, vaccine, or maybe it's just 2 doses. And I think ultimately the proof is what we see at the clinical bedside. You know, and I think earlier this year, there were many of us who thought that just 2 doses would be enough, but the Delta variant really changed that calculus. And so I think we need to wait and see where the science goes. You know, there is a precedent for multi-dose vaccine series, right? So if folks think about their MMR series that they received as a kid, that's 3 and sometimes 4 doses. And so, you know, whether it's a single dose annually or it's a sort of multi-boost phase campaign is less, important. What's really important is that people are well protected.
Dr. Ramirez, we're also hearing about this new coronavirus mutation. Dr. Anthony Fauci brought it up yesterday. Let's listen to that.
We certainly are aware of the Mu variant. We're keeping a very close eye on it. This variant has a constellation of mutations that suggest that it would evade certain antibodies, not only monoclonal antibodies, but vaccine and convalescent serum-induced antibodies. But there isn't a lot of clinical data to suggest that. Bottom line, we're paying attention to it. We take everything like that seriously, but we don't consider it an immediate threat right now.
Dr. Ramirez, how concerned are you about this potential variant?
I'm with Dr. Fauci on this. I mean, I think this is something that we're keeping an eye on, but it's not anything that I'm spending a ton of time thinking about. Right now, the Mu variant is classified as a variant of interest, which means that we are, trying to learn more about it and figure out what it's doing. But it would only become a variant of concern if it shows increased transmissibility or it shows an increased risk of putting people in the hospital or causing more severe disease. And as it turns out, the Mu variant is actually decreasing in prevalence around the world. It's increasing a little bit in Central America, which is why in Colombia, which is why we're keeping a close eye on this. And so we'll see where this goes over the next few weeks. But he made the important point to note that, a lot of these studies about decreasing resistance really have only taken place in test tubes. What we need to know is how this behaves in the wild and where this goes over the next several weeks and months.
All right. Dr. Mario Ramirez, doctor, thanks as always. Appreciate it. Let's take a look at what else is making news around the world this morning.
NBC News correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us from Rome. Hey, Claudio, good morning.
Hey, guys, good morning. Well, in New Zealand, a man walked into a supermarket and stabbed at least 6 people before he was shot dead by police. Now, the country's prime minister said that the Sri Lankan national who arrived in New Zealand in 2016 was a follower of Islamic State ideology and that he had been under police surveillance for a while. And scientists in other news have been using a technique used to develop the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine to develop another vaccine they hope that will also help to treat cancer. Now, while tested in mice, the experimental vaccine showed that it increases significantly T cells, which target tumors. And last but not least, a para swimmer with no arms from China has won 4 gold medals at the Tokyo Games. And in the meantime, he also broke several Paralympic and world records. Now, Zheng Tao, this is the name of the para swimmer, had both his arms amputated as a child after an electric shock. But since then, he grew to become one of the most successful para swimmers of all times, guys. This is a very inspirational story.
No kidding. Impressive. Wow.
It really is. Oh, and congrats to him on all those medals. That's so great.
Amazing. All right. Thank you, Claudio.
Coming up, an NBC News exclusive taking us back to Surfside, Florida.
We're going to hear for the first time from one of the families who escaped that deadly condo collapse. That story next. The Federal Aviation Administration is grounding the Virgin Galactic spacecraft and investigating a mishap that happened with that space flight that carried founder Richard Branson in July. Turns out that what viewers watched on TV wasn't maybe as flawless as it seemed. The FAA confirmed an earlier report by The New Yorker saying that a warning light went off on the spacecraft when it flew outside its designated air traffic control cleared area. And all the craft was outside that designated area for 1 minute and 41 seconds. Virgin Galactic confirms that, but says passengers and crew were never at danger as a result of the change of trajectory. The FAA says Virgin won't be able to fly until the investigation is complete. The company is hoping to launch its next space flight in late September or early October. Obviously, that'll depend on what the FAA has to say about all that.
Yeah, wow. I don't know how much that's a good talker day, but it's interesting.
It's a talker.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Especially with the whole billionaire space race. It's so interesting. All right, Joe, thank you.
Yep.
And now to an NBC News exclusive. Survivors of the deadly condo collapse in Surfside, Florida are speaking out for the first time, sharing their heartache and loss. Devin and Angela Gonzalez were inside the building when it came down more than 2 months ago. Incredibly, they survived and were rescued from the rubble. NBC News correspondent Carrie Sanders has the exclusive and emotional interview, and we want to warn you, some of the video you're about to see may be disturbing.
That vacant space over my shoulder is where the Champlain Tower South once stood. It was 12 stories tall. Firefighters pulled 98 bodies from the rubble, but they also were able to rescue 3 survivors. And now, for the first time, 2 of those survivors, a 16-year-old and her mother, are talking to us and asking the question, why did this have to happen? The Gonzalez family, 16-year-old Devin on crutches, her mother Angela in the wheelchair, and older daughter and sister Taylor, who had left the condo only hours before this.
I see many people on the balconies. The building is gone. There's no elevators. This is nothing. I mean, it almost resembles a trade center.
In just 12 seconds at around 1:30 a.m., the 136-unit condo, without warning, collapsed. June 24th, 2021, the unimaginable happens. What do you remember?
I remember Mom yelling, run, and dragging me out of bed.
Did you know what was going on?
I did not. I was half asleep. I thought I was dreaming at that point.
Devin, her mother and father had been watching a late-night scary horror movie in the master bedroom. All were lying in the same bed, now living a real-life horror.
It just felt like an earthquake.
Angela, 45 years old, says a split second before the floor gave way, she heard what she thought was thunder.
I just screamed, run, and just, kept screaming to run. She was half asleep, so, it's like dragging her out of the room, as fast as I could. But we, like she said, we didn't make it very far. We made it maybe right out of our bedroom, maybe a couple steps right out of our bedroom, and then the floor just started to cave. So that's when we both, it was almost like 2 little falls, like falling as the floor caved in, and then I just grabbed her for the remainder of the fall.
Do you remember the sensation of it going down?
I do. It's indescribable. I can't even describe it to you.
Their condo was on the 9th floor. Devin fell with the building 5 stories. Her mother unconscious on debris slightly above.
Whoever thinks a building's gonna collapse on you, just never. I'm sorry.
Devin's left leg was crushed, her femur snapped, and the wound was deep and wide open. She could see bone and blood. Lots of blood. And you were freaking out?
At first I did. I won't deny that I did, but once the situation hit me, my instant reaction was I have to get help and I have to lay my leg down somewhere, because holding the leg made me lightheaded because of the blood loss. So I had to find a place, like objects, since it was an apartment building, everything fell. So that means different home objects. So I found things around me, like the distinctive one I found was a pot, and I flipped it over on the flat side, put it on the ground, and that's where I laid my leg out.
Devin screamed for her mother.
So this is the part I don't remember so much. I remember, bits and pieces. But I was unconscious when I landed.
She was. For the first 15 minutes, I didn't hear my mom. I didn't know where anyone was, and it was me constantly screaming for help.
Rescue teams eventually reached Devin and then her mother. They used a door in the debris field as a stretcher to bring Angela down. Taylor had gotten word of what happened. She rushed home to a cloud of concrete dust and chaos.
At first, they told me that if they were on that side of the building, there wasn't going to be any survivors. So that was a very difficult night.
Taylor eventually found and identified her sister and mother in the hospital. Angela was in a coma for 5 days. She came out of it on her birthday and then learned her husband Edgar had died.
He was my best friend. He was my person. So every day it's, you go to sleep and then you wake up and your whole life is completely different.
I didn't get to say goodbye, but a lot of people, have said that just saying goodnight and I love you and I see you in the morning was a lot better than a goodbye, because it's like, I'll see you later. But I'm glad I had that.
The family lost every tangible item they owned in the disaster. The only thing they still have, Edgar's wedding ring, recovered from his body.
We have this thing that every week, each of us get it. I got it for the first week of school. It's going to be Taylor's turn on Monday, and then after Taylor, it's Mom, and we all just wear it.
Each week, we share it.
Angela's liver and bladder were lacerated, her pelvis shattered. Doctors say it may take a year, but she should walk again. She recently took her first steps in rehab. Her nurse says Angela's perseverance, with her daughters as cheerleaders, suggests she may be walking even sooner. The Gonzalez family and others who escaped from the still standing portions of the condo say they've been overwhelmed by strangers offering support. The National Institute of Standards and Technology is now investigating, like the NTSB after a plane crash. NIST will eventually issue a report on why this happened. Do you think you'll ever get the answer?
I hope so. I really do hope so. I want to know why my husband lost his life. I want to know why they don't have their father.
You may have noticed 16-year-old Devin is on crutches. She's also a standout volleyball player and says getting back on the court and playing with her teammates is really a big part of what is driving her rehabilitation. The Gonzalez family lost everything they own in this disaster, but remarkably, their pet cat Binks also survived the collapse and has now been reunited with the family.
Just incredible to hear from them.
Absolutely. And that detail about the ring, that they were able to find it and they can take turns sharing it. What a powerful thing. And they found the cat, which is
I know. And the daughters as cheerleaders for their mom. I'm sure she will be walking much sooner than expected.
Really a strong family.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks to Carrie for that. Coming up, if it's Friday, you know, we've got your weekly dose of good to know.
From digital driver's licenses you can keep on your iPhone to a new way you can sync up your taste in music with your closest friends on Spotify. Those stories and more up next.
In lower income areas, land is often passed down without any legal paperwork, which can make owners vulnerable to land grabs and hurt their ability to get federal assistance after a disaster.
Yeah, and now new federal rules are aiming to protect those families from losing their land. NBC News Now correspondent Dasha Burns explains.
In Bucksport, South Carolina, the battles are fought through faith and community. People here can trace their roots back to over a century of life on this land, which has been passed down generation to generation, often informally, without a will. The legal term for that is heirs property.
It's always called family land. It was only after post-flooding that we understood that had a legal ramification to it as well.
Bucksport is in an increasingly flood-prone region. Back-to-back hurricanes in recent years devastated the area, and in 2018, Hurricane Florence destroyed Hazel Bellamy's home.
Yeah, that's that water line from Florence.
She found out she lives on heirs property when she applied for FEMA aid.
They couldn't approve us for certain things. It was a nightmare.
Hazel's name is not on the deed. None of her living relatives are either. That meant they couldn't prove the land was theirs according to long-standing FEMA funding requirements.
Heirs property owners can't get a mortgage, have limited to no access to housing repair money because you cannot prove clear ownership.
FEMA's new policy will change that by expanding the list of documentation they'll accept for individual assistance. But heirs property owners are still not in the clear.
At any moment, an heir could sell his or her share, which then makes everybody vulnerable to having their property lost.
When someone dies without a will, their heirs, kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, and so on, all own the land jointly as tenants in common. A property could end up with hundreds of part owners, and if just one of them decides to sell their share, that could result in the forced sale of the entire property below market value. About 60% of African-American owned land is heirs property and vulnerable to land grabs. Bucksport, just 30 miles from Myrtle Beach, is a prime target for developers.
Development can be good and bad, but when you're in heirs property, it's definitely going to be a bad thing.
And it's not just a problem for Black Americans. It impacts the Native American community, people in Appalachia, and the Latino colonias on the border.
Heirs property is an issue among low-income folk. low-income folk do not sit around the dinner table and discuss estate planning.
And fixing it is often unaffordable. Hazel's family paid a lawyer $7,000 to update their deed.
And did it get you guys anywhere?
Nope, they wanted more money, and we couldn't afford it.
Are you worried that you might not be able to protect this property?
I am. This is our home. This is what our parents left us. This is our heritage. This is where we belong.
Sasha Burns, NBC News, Bucksport, South Carolina.
This morning, we've got a new way to show your ID and a new way to find out just how compatible you are with your friends. Plus, some important online safety updates.
Here's NBC News investigative and consumer correspondent Vicki Nguyen with one of our favorite segments, this week's edition of Good to Know.
Hey, good morning. As if we need another reason to keep our phones tethered to us, Apple just announced the states that can now issue digital driver's licenses and state IDs. Arizona and Georgia will introduce the feature, with Connecticut, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Oklahoma, and Utah to follow. The company did not specify the rollout timeline, but said the digital ID will let you get through airport security in some states. Be on the lookout for a new message from Instagram. The company said this week it will require all users to share their date of birth if they haven't already done so. It's part of the company's rollout of a new safety feature for younger users, especially those under 13. TikTok is now offering resources to help parents navigate their children's online activity. The platform partnered with nonprofit Internet Matters to offer tips in its parental control section. Tips include how parents can talk with their kids about screen time and online boundaries. So how compatible really are you and your friends? Now Spotify has a way to measure that. The company announced a new feature that will create a personalized playlist for two users. The experience is called Blend. It will create a playlist for you and a friend based off of your favorite songs. It even gives you a match score to see how your tastes sync up. Get your helmets ready for holiday shopping. Best Buy is expanding its offerings just in time for the shopping season. The retailer says it will start selling e-bikes, scooters, and mopeds online and in stores. The products are available starting October 10th at select stores across the country. For News Now, I'm Vicki Nguyen, and that's Good to Know.
Now it's time for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
CNBC's Christina Partsinevelos joins us this morning. Hey, Christina, good morning.
Good morning. Walmart is raising wages for more than 500,000 store employees by at least $1 an hour ahead of the holiday shopping season. The move comes as retailers are worried they won't be able to hire enough temporary workers to keep up with crowds of people in stores and online due to the pandemic. This is Walmart's third pay hike in the past year. The company's average wage right now is $16.40 an hour. Space company Firefly comes up short in its first attempt to reach the final frontier. The company's Alpha rocket suffering a fatal issue about 2 minutes after lifting off, exploding in a massive fireball over the California sky last night. Firefly stressing this was only a test flight. The failure isn't a surprise, as some of the company's rivals also struggled in their early test flights. Firefly has raised nearly $200 million from investors and is valued at about $1 billion. Amazon is reportedly planning to launch its own branded TV in the United States as soon as next month. Business Insider says the TV has been in the works for nearly 2 years. The device will be manufactured by a third party, will also be powered by Alexa, and have a screen size ranging from 55 to 75 inches. Amazon has declined to comment. Another way they can enter our homes, right?
Yeah, really.
Exactly. Screaming or TV. I want that thing that person's wearing on the screen.
And then you can buy it.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
And coming up, the curtain is once again rising on Broadway with two of its major shows returning this week.
That's right. I had a chance to see Waitress last night, and after the break, we'll bring you my conversation with one of the stars of Hadestown, which is also back. Stick around. Broadway is back. Nearly 18 months after New York's famed theaters closed their doors, plays and musicals are starting to reopen, with 15 shows scheduled to open this month. The Tony Award-winning musical Hadestown returned last night. I spoke with one of the show's stars about how it feels to be back on stage. So when you found out Broadway was coming back, what was the first thing you thought?
Of course, just thrilled, because that meant that not only me, but the people I cared about would have a job again.
Eva Noblezada is once again Eurydice, the same role she was playing in March of 2020 when Broadway suddenly went dark.
I mean, it looks beautiful.
During the pandemic, she hunkered down with Reeve Carney, her co-star on stage and partner off. What went through your mind when you would see just Broadway quiet, the marquees dark?
Did you get a chance to see that?
Yeah.
We were like, what the heck is going on?
So what got you through?
Oh, God. Hope and a full glass of gin. The remembrance of how fulfilling theater is and being surrounded by theaters, I went, I must be here for a reason.
That reason? A different kind of Broadway revival. In recent weeks, productions have been reuniting and rehearsing. And the cast of Waitress starring Sarah Bareilles to The Music Man with Hugh Jackman. This month, Hamilton, The Lion King, and Wicked are all slated to hit the stage, along with Moulin Rouge, the musical. Star Aaron Tveit says his show now has a new energy.
Feels like we're putting on kind of the Broadway 2.0 production of Moulin Rouge.
I mean, do you see this show in sort of a different light after everything we've gone through?
This show at its core is about a group of artists kind of fighting for the opportunity to practice their art and share their art.
Now all these casts will finally share their art for crowds that must bring a mask and proof of vaccination. Broadway's reopening act.
To hear that group of people laugh or cry or celebrate, getting goosebumps thinking about it, yeah, it's just, it's like nothing else.
Waitress also opened last night to a packed house with standing ovations throughout, even before the show started. I know, because I was there. The cast paid tribute to Nick Cordero, who died last year after complications from COVID-19. Cordero originated the role of Earl. And I'll have more on Broadway's big reopening, including an interview with Waitress star Sarah Bareilles during our Return to Broadway special. That starts streaming on Monday at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on NBC News Now.
Hey, how cool is that graphic?
I know. Nothing like last night. I mean, literally, the announcer came on and said, the show is about to start. Standing ovation. First actors take the stage. Standing ovation every song. I mean, I think the stars were even caught off guard.
Oh, I bet. That would have made me teary-eyed just to be in a crowd that's, you know, excited. I mean, and she's told me so much about all the precautions, of course, that you felt so safe.
We felt safe. You know, everyone's vaccinated. Everyone wore their masks. It's not one of those situations where, like, people have their mask below their nose or their whatever. People were wearing their masks. They took it seriously, which was great. And also, I mean, it's important. Nick Cordero died after having COVID. His wife, Amanda Klutz, was there. We saw her at the beginning. She took the stage at the end. They sang the song, Live Your Life. They've made a tribute to him. They named one of the pies Live Your Life Pie. It's named after one of his songs, so it's a touching tribute to him as well.
Absolutely. That was a journey that we all followed along a lot via social media with her documenting his struggle, just somebody young who passed away from COVID during this time. So how cool. I mean, just lots of layers to how amazing that story was. Thank you, Joe.
Check out the special. And that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.